All of this is with the ultimate aim of reducing the rate of euthanasia of healthy and treatable animals in shelters to zero. So if these are, if this resonates with you, then we'd definitely like to speak to you. We're always looking for new passionate members, so that would be great. I keep standing further and further back. I just thought it was probably appropriate just to start with outlining some of the facts and just clear up any misunderstandings that we may have about breed-specific legislation. All states, except the ACT, Northern Territory and Tasmania, have some form of breed-specific legislation, including here in South Australia. In South Australia, we have 5 breeds of dogs that are referred to as prescribed breeds. These are the American Pit Bull Terrier, the Fila Brasileiro, the Japanese Tosa, Dogo Argentina, and Presa Canario. And Presa Canario was added to the list of prescribed breeds as recent as the 1st of July in 2004. Now we have had the restrictions on the other breeds of dogs, so the 4 first breeds of dogs that I read out, since the introduction of the Dog and Cat Management Act on the 1st of July 1995. This legislation does impose some restrictions on what an owner of these dogs may do, including ensuring that the dog is desexed, registered and properly identified. Stiffer penalties if the dog is found wandering at large in a school, kindergarten, childcare centre, preschool centre or a shop, excluding pet stores, grooming parlours and vets, without the permission of the person in charge of those premises. Owners are also guilty of an aggravated offence if the dog is allowed to attack. The prescribed breeds must be muzzled and under physical restraint when outside of the home, and it is an offence to sell or give away or advertise for sale or give away a prescribed breed, which means here in South Australia, prescribed breeds cannot be rehomed if they're surrendered to a shelter. Whilst many of us here today are opposed to restricting these dogs simply based on their breed, the issue of breed-specific legislation has really come to the forefront because of some of the restrictions imposed on prescribed breeds in other states of Australia. Of particular concern is the breed-specific legislation in Victoria, which was introduced as a result of a very tragic incident involving a 4-year-old named Ayan Chol, who was mauled to death by her family's pit bull mastiff. And that legislation, I mean, that was a very tragic incident, but that legislation that was introduced draconian measures simply as a knee-jerk reaction to these tragic incidents. Now, the issue with the Victorian legislation, as many of you might be aware, is the Act makes it illegal to keep a restricted breed dog. Full stop. It's illegal to have one of those prescribed breed dogs that I read out before. Now, there was an amnesty period before this legislation was introduced, which allowed owners of these dogs to register their dog as a restricted breed so that they weren't in violation of that law. But what we have now is we have owners of dogs who are now worried that their dog may look like one of the dogs in getting caught up and seized under this breed-specific legislation, and they obviously didn't register their dog as a restricted breed. So these owners are worried because the legislation in Victoria allows an authorised officer of the council to judge purely on physical characteristics alone whether the dog meets an approved standard for the restricted breed. If the authorised officer has a reasonable belief, and that's all that's required, a reasonable belief that the dog meets one of the standards, then that dog is deemed a restricted breed. That's it. No ifs, no buts. Doesn't matter about what other evidence might be available. Under the Victorian Act, an authorised officer has the power to seize any dog if the officer reasonably believes that the dog to be a restricted breed dog. So people in Victoria could just be walking their dog, a council officer see them and seize the dog. If the officer has that reasonable belief that they meet the approved standard. There's no requirement for the particular dog to have harassed or attacked or menaced or been a nuisance in order to be seized. If the owners cannot be located, so if the dog's just found wandering at large and there's a reasonable belief it's a restricted breed, then the dog must be destroyed under the Act. The dog can also be destroyed if the council cannot or will not allow the dog to be registered. Similarly, the council may destroy the dog if the owner is found not to have complied with one of the legislative requirements for keeping a restricted breed dog, such as notifying the council within 24 hours if the dog is missing, or if they have even changed their address, or if the dog is not wearing its prescribed collar. So there's a lot of requirements, and if they're found to have not met one of those, then the dog can be destroyed. So the good news is, and there is some good news in this, that there is no move to introduce such draconian legislation here in South Australia. Whilst we oppose all breed-specific legislation in all its forms, today is really about showing our support and solidarity to our fellow pet guardians who live in states and territories and even countries where the consequences of having a restricted breed dog are far more severe. Now, you're going to hear from a range of speakers on the issues surrounding breed-specific legislation, including why it doesn't work and what is a more effective solution to addressing to reducing the incidence and severity of dog attacks. So today's first speaker is Tim Vasudeva. Sorry, Tim. The new Chief Executive Officer of RSPCA South Australia. Tim has recently joined the RSPCA South Australia with a unique blend of experience and knowledge of the animal welfare sector, combined with an extensive business background gained through senior and executive roles in banking and the finance industry. He has a Bachelor of Commerce degree, majoring in commercial law, economics and accounting majors from Melbourne University. Tim has a proven track record in the animal welfare sector. Tim, prior to joining the RSPCA South Australia, Tim was the Chief Executive Officer of the Animal Welfare League in New South Wales. And under his stewardship, the Animal Welfare League New South Wales dramatically improved rehoming rates of companion animals via Animal Welfare League's 3 Sydney shelters. And they went from 45% rehoming in 2011 to 84% currently, which is an incredible feat. Tim has held senior volunteer positions at the Sydney Dogs and Cats Home, Pet Rescue and Animal Rescue Korea. So please welcome Tim to the microphone.